All right, so buckle up because today we are diving deep into Elon Musk's plans to colonize Mars. And let me tell you, the stuff we found for this deep dive is really fascinating. We got articles about the technical details and the politics of it all. But then, to add some spice to the mix, we also got this YouTube video by some French engineers, and they're not exactly sold on the whole idea.
Well, it's good to get different perspectives, right? Musk's vision is definitely ambitious, like really ambitious. But I mean, come on, there are tons of challenges to figure out before we start packing our bags for Mars. And that's exactly what we're going to dig into today. Can we actually make this happen, or is this just some, you know, billionaire's sci-fi fantasy?
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so first things first, Musk wants to build a whole city on Mars, like a self-sustaining city with 1 million people by 2050. He even said that going to the moon is just a distraction compared to Mars. So I gotta ask, why is he so obsessed with Mars? I mean, what makes it so much better than just setting up shop on the moon?
Well, there's a strategic reason behind Musk's thinking here. He sees Mars as a potential backup plan for humanity. Just in case something catastrophic happens to Earth. He doesn't think the moon can really support a long-term, self-sufficient colony that could actually grow. It's not just about building an outpost, it's about creating a whole new branch of civilization.
Okay, that makes sense. But getting to Mars and actually surviving there, I mean, those are two totally different things, right? And that brings us to Starship, which is this massive reusable spacecraft. This is what's supposed to take us to Mars. It all sounds really impressive, but are we maybe overlooking some huge obstacles here?
Starship is an incredible feat of engineering, that's for sure. But the financial and logistical hurdles are massive. Getting enough funding is always a challenge, even for someone like Musk. And then there's the whole logistics of building and launching a spacecraft this big, not to mention all the testing and certifications you need for any manned mission. It's not just about building a rocket, it's about creating a whole infrastructure to support it.
You know, it's interesting because I've heard some experts say we should use the moon as a stepping stone to Mars. Like we could mine stuff there like oxygen and fuel, make it a sort of cosmic pit stop on the way to Mars. But Musk seems totally against this idea. He wants to go straight to Mars. I'm curious, what's the thinking behind that? I mean, using the moon's resources seems like it would be a huge advantage.
Musk's argument is that focusing on the moon would just take resources and manpower away from the main goal, which is Mars. He thinks any delays, any side projects, would slow things down and maybe even risk the whole mission. It's a big gamble,
Hmm.
but that's kind of Musk's style. He's going all in on a direct flight to Mars, one single focused effort.
High risk, high reward, I guess.
Yeah.
Speaking of risks, remember those French engineers we mentioned?
Mm.
They have some serious doubts about colonizing Mars. Their video paints a pretty grim picture of what it's like on Mars. It's not exactly a welcoming place.
They raise some good points. The Martian atmosphere is super thin, almost non-existent compared to Earth's. The temperatures are crazy, swinging from boiling hot to freezing cold. And maybe the biggest problem is the radiation. Mars doesn't have a global magnetic field like Earth does, so the surface is constantly bombarded with harmful radiation from the sun. That's a major challenge for anyone planning to live there long term.
Yeah, and they even compared it to Earth's ozone layer. You know how it traps water vapor. Mars doesn't have that, so even if we could melt the polar ice caps, keeping that water around long term would be a huge issue. Looks like terraforming Mars is a lot more complicated than just melting some ice and sticking a flag in the ground.
It's not just about melting ice.
Yeah.
We're talking about creating a whole stable ecosystem that can support itself. Mars has weak gravity, so it's really hard for it to hold on to an atmosphere.
Yeah.
Without a good atmosphere, liquid water is just going to disappear. We're talking about building a planetary environment from scratch. It's mind-blowingly difficult.
Okay, so terraforming might be a long shot. But what about mining resources from asteroids? Could we do some kind of cosmic heist and get the stuff we need to build our Mars colony from space rocks?
It's an interesting idea, but those French engineers, they did some back-of-the-envelope calculations based on the cost of the Apollo missions. They said that bringing back just 400 kilos of moon rock would cost like $100 billion today. Now imagine how much it would cost to get enough resources for a whole Martian colony. The numbers are astronomical, pun intended.
So basically, we're talking about a space gold rush, except the gold is like iron and oxygen, and it's going to cost a fortune to get it. Doesn't seem very practical, does it?
Not with the technology we have now, and not anytime soon. The energy and resources needed to mine asteroids and then ship those materials to Mars would be insane. It's a logistical nightmare, even before we think about the environmental impact of all that space mining. I mean, it would be messing with celestial bodies, maybe even changing their orbits. We could create a whole new set of problems in the process.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's like we're so focused on escaping Earth's problems that we might end up creating cosmic ones instead.
You know, those French engineers had some pretty thought-provoking ideas. They didn't hold back. They even called a Mars colony a prison for billionaires. It's a harsh thing to say, but it makes you think, right? What would life on Mars really be like for those first colonists?
What they said, even though it's kind of provocative, it does highlight the mental and social challenges of being in space for a long time. Imagine being stuck in a tiny habitat with just a handful of other people on a barren planet where everything is trying to kill you. The isolation, the constant danger, the lack of any comforts from home, that would take a toll on even the toughest people.
Yeah, it's like a one-way ticket to a very exclusive and very dangerous social experiment. We're talking about pushing the limits of human endurance, both physically and mentally. Exactly. We have to be honest with ourselves about how stressful it would be to live in such an extreme environment. The risks aren't just physical, they're emotional and social, too.
That's a sobering thought. Okay, let's shift gears a bit and talk about the politics surrounding all of this. SpaceX is a private company, but they've gotten a lot of support from the government, especially during the Trump administration. Is that level of support going to last, or could it all disappear and ruin Musk's plans?
Politics can change really quickly. I mean, the current administration has been all for space exploration, but who knows what the future holds? A new president could come in and cut NASA's funding, which would be a huge blow to Musk.
True, government funding is unreliable, so depending on it can be risky. And let's not forget about other countries. China is really stepping up their space program. Could we see another space race, this time with everyone fighting over Mars?
Absolutely. The geopolitics of space is changing fast. It's not just about national pride anymore. It's about resources, strategic advantages, and scientific discoveries that could shift the balance of power back on Earth.
Wow, sounds like the stakes are even higher than we thought. We've got technical challenges, environmental hurdles, psychological unknowns, and now a whole layer of geopolitical intrigue. We've got a lot to unpack, and we're just getting started. But before we get lost in all the Martian dust, let's take a closer look at the man behind this whole crazy plan, Elon Musk. What makes him tick? Is he just driven by science, or is there something deeper, something more personal that's pushing him on this cosmic quest?
Welcome back to our deep dive on Elon Musk's Mars plan. So last time we were talking about Musk himself, the guy behind this whole Martian dream. And what's interesting is that his reasons for doing all this seem to be more than just scientific curiosity or, wanting to build cool technology. It's like he feels this deeper need, almost a philosophical one.
Yeah, you're right. It's not just about planting a flag on Mars for him. He talks about turning humanity into a multiplanetary species, making sure we survive even if something really bad happens to Earth. There's this feeling of urgency, like we need to do it now to guarantee our future beyond Earth. I don't know, it's both inspiring and kind of scary at the same time.
Totally. It's like he took an idea straight out of a classic sci-fi book, but instead of just imagining it, he's actually trying to make it happen. And that brings up a whole bunch of questions about, what a Martian society would even look like, how would it work,
Yeah,
and who would even get a seat on that first Starship to the Red Planet.
that's a great question. Okay, let's say we figure out all the technical stuff, we get the money, and we're ready to send people to Mars. How do we choose who goes? Is it like a lottery? Do we pick scientists and engineers first? Or do we try to get a really diverse group, people from all different backgrounds? It's like a cosmic version of Noah's Ark, figuring out who gets a spot on the ship to a new world.
Yeah, that's a tough one. And there are no easy answers. On the one hand, you want the best and the brightest, the people with the skills to build a colony that can actually function. But then again, you also want a society that reflects all the different aspects of humanity. It's all about balance, and whoever gets to decide the selection criteria is going to face a lot of scrutiny and debate.
It makes you wonder, right? Would Martian society just end up copying all the structures of hierarchies we have here on Earth? Or would it be a chance to hit the reset button? To build something totally new, a society without poverty, inequality, maybe even war? It sounds amazing, but is it even possible?
It's definitely a noble goal, but we can't ignore human nature. Even if we're on a completely new planet, we still bring our baggage with us, our biases, our ingrained ways of behaving. The challenge wouldn't just be building houses on Mars. He would be building a better society, a more just and fair one. And honestly, that's a challenge we haven't even figured out here on Earth yet.
True. You can't just escape human nature by flying off to another planet. And that brings up another interesting, kind of creepy thought. What if we have a permanent colony on Mars? People living there for generations, isolated from Earth. What happens to our species then? Could they evolve into a new species, genetically different from us Earthlings?
Scientists are definitely thinking about genetic drift. The environment on Mars, with its weaker gravity, different atmosphere, and all that radiation, it could favor certain traits over others. And over many generations, those small changes could add up to big genetic differences between Martians and Earthlings.
Okay, so maybe we're talking about future Martians who are taller, skinnier, or maybe even a different color. But how fast could those changes happen? Are we talking centuries, thousands of years, or something else entirely?
That's a tough one to answer for sure. How fast genes change depends on a lot of factors, like the size of the population, mutation rates, and how strong the environmental pressures are. It's probably a slow process happening over many generations, not a sudden transformation. But the idea of a separate Martian species is pretty fascinating, and it brings up a ton of ethical and philosophical questions.
It's like those first contact stories in sci-fi, but in this case, we're making contact with our own descendants. How would we even interact with them? Would we see them as equals or as something different? It's mind-blowing to think about.
It challenges everything we think we know about being human, and it forces us to think about the long-term consequences of what we're doing, not just for now, but for the distant future.
We've been talking about building a new society on Mars, but what about actually changing the planet itself? Terraforming, making Mars more Earth-like has been a sci-fi dream for ages. But could we actually do it? Could we turn a barren, deadly planet into a green and livable paradise?
The science behind terraforming is super complex. It's not as simple as just releasing a bunch of greenhouse gases to warm the planet up. We'd need to make a breathable atmosphere, create a water cycle that actually works. We'd even have to figure out how to create a magnetic field to protect the planet from all that harmful radiation. It's a massive undertaking, and it would require technologies we don't even have yet.
You mentioned creating a breathable atmosphere. How would we even do that? Would we have to plant billions of trees or something? Or build some kind of giant air-making machines?
There are a few ideas floating around, but each one has its own set of challenges and potential problems. One idea is to introduce extremophiles. Those are microbes that can survive in really harsh environments. They could maybe start converting Martian carbon dioxide into oxygen. Another idea is to crash icy comets or asteroids into Mars. That would deliver tons of water and other stuff that could help thicken the atmosphere.
So we're talking about messing with the planet on a massive scale, something that could take hundreds or even thousands of years to finish.
Exactly. And even if we could terraform Mars, we have to ask ourselves, should we even do it? What are the ethical implications of completely changing another planet? What if there's already life on Mars, hiding underground somewhere? Do we have the right to wipe it out just because we want to live there?
That's a huge ethical question, and it's one we need to seriously consider. It's like that old saying, with great power comes great responsibility. We might have the power to change whole worlds, but are we wise enough to do it the right way?
That's a question we'll have to keep asking ourselves as we explore further into space. But one thing is for sure, the ethical questions are just as important as the technical challenges, maybe even more so.
It reminds us that space exploration isn't just about rockets and science. It's about our values, our ethics, and how we see the future of humanity. And on that note, I think it's time to talk about money. Because let's be honest, all this talk about going to Mars is going to cost a ton of cash. And we're back for the final leg of our Martian journey. We've talked about the technical stuff, the ethical stuff, and now it's time to face the cold, hard cash. Because let's be real. Going to Mars is going to cost a boatload of money, way more than any earthly budget we've ever seen.
Oh yeah, we're talking trillions of dollars, maybe even more. Just to give you an idea, the whole Apollo program, the one that put people on the moon, that cost about $150 billion in today's money. And Mars is a whole other beast. It's farther, way more complicated, and we need a lot more infrastructure to pull it off.
Whoa, that's a crazy amount of money. So the big question is, who's paying for all this? Are taxpayers footing the bill, or are we talking private investors? And even more importantly, what's the payoff? It's not like we're going to be mining Martian diamonds and selling them back on Earth, right?
Well, that's the thing. It's like a really long-term investment, and nobody knows for sure what the return will be. People who support going to Mars say that all the new technology we develop for it will end up changing industries back here on Earth. Like, it could lead to big advances in energy, medicine, materials, all kinds of stuff that could benefit everyone.
So it's kind of like the space race back in the 20th century. All that money we poured into rockets and satellites ended up giving us things like GPS and weather forecasting. So we're basically hoping for a similar kind of ripple effect, but on a way bigger scale.
Exactly. The idea is that investing in space isn't just about reaching for the stars. It's about pushing the limits of what we know and what we can create, and that ends up helping everyone back on Earth. But of course, not everybody agrees with this.
Yeah, I can see how some people would say that those trillions of dollars could be better spent on problems we have right now, like climate change, poverty, hunger. Why spend all that money on another planet when we've got so much to fix right here at home?
Yeah, that's a fair point. It's all about priorities, right? How do we balance taking care of our immediate needs with thinking about the long term? Do we focus all our energy on fixing our own planet? Or do we try to create a backup plan, a plan B for humanity? Tough question.
Really tough. And it makes you think about the role of private companies like SpaceX. They're obviously in it for the money, at least partly, but they're also the ones making a lot of the progress in space. Is this the right way to do things? Or are we basically handing over the future of humanity to a bunch of billionaires?
It's a complicated situation for sure. On one hand, these companies have the money and the drive to really push things forward. But on the other hand, there's the question of who's in charge and who's making the decisions. Are these companies accountable to anyone? What are they really trying to achieve in the long run? And who gets to decide how we explore and use space?
Those are all great questions. And they bring up another big topic we haven't really talked about yet. What about the legal stuff, the geopolitics of all this? Let's say we do manage to put people on Mars permanently. Who's in charge then? Is it a free-for-all? Or are there some international rules that apply?
Well, there's this thing called the Outer Space Treaty, signed back in 1967. Over 100 countries have signed it. And it basically says that no country can claim ownership of any planets or moons or anything like that. So, in theory, nobody can just plant a flag on Mars and say, this is mine.
Okay, so no Martian empires then. But what about companies? Can they just go there and do whatever they want? Can they mine resources, build settlements, basically act like they own parts of Mars?
That's where things get a little fuzzy. The treaty doesn't really talk about private companies in space, and there are a lot of arguments going on right now about property rights, resource extraction, and environmental protection on other planets. Legally speaking, it's kind of like the Wild West out there.
Uh-oh, that sounds like a recipe for trouble. If you've got different countries and companies all competing for a piece of the Martian pie, how do you stop things from getting out of control? Could we end up repeating the mistakes of colonialism, but this time on another planet?
It's definitely a risk we need to think about. We need strong international cooperation, clear laws, and a shared understanding of responsibility to make sure that exploring space benefits everyone, not just a few powerful people or countries. It's about learning from the past and creating a future where we can work together in space instead of fighting over it.
So after all this deep diving, it's pretty clear that Elon Musk's Mars plan is about way more than just rockets and technology. It's about science, economics, politics, ethics. It's a huge, complicated puzzle, and it's a conversation we all need to be part of, not just the scientists and the billionaires.
Exactly. Whether or not we ever actually get to Mars, just thinking about these questions, trying to understand the challenges and the possibilities of space exploration, it makes us think about what it means to be human, about our values, and about the kind of future we want to create.
Wow, what an amazing journey this has been. We've talked about everything from spaceships to philosophy, and it seems like every answer just leads to more questions. It reminds us that exploration, no matter where it takes us, is always an ongoing process. There's always something new to discover.
The universe is a vast and mysterious place, and we're just beginning to understand it. So let's keep asking questions, keep pushing the boundaries, and keep looking up at the stars. Who knows what incredible things we might find out there.
And that's a wrap on this deep dive. Thanks for coming along with us on this incredible journey to Mars and beyond. Until next time, stay curious.